and I'm a friend of Joe's. I met Joe the same way that most of you here probably met him. I was riding my bike up Mount Diablo on a Sunday morning. It was about 10 years ago. I've been thinking the last couple weeks, trying to recall exactly when I met Joe, and I can't recall the exact ride. I know, to start with, he was just another cyclist that I passed on the mountain, and I glanced over my shoulder as I passed him, and I said, "That dude looks pretty old to be riding." And I didn't think too much about it, but I thought, well, good for him. And some Sundays later, timing-wise, it worked out again that we met because he would ride the north gate, and I would start on the south gate, so I'd only have the chance to meet up with him from Junction and above. And so I was feeling kind of tired this next time I came upon. I said, well, I'm going to see who this fella is. And I introduced myself, and he said, hey, I'm Joe, and we started talking. And that's when I learned that he rides up Mount Diablo from his house in Lafayette once a week. And the reason he was riding on Sunday is because that's the first day of the week. And he wanted to make sure that the weather was the best for the ride. And so if Sunday was good weather, he would go on Sunday. And the only time it would be a later day in the week was if it had been bad weather on Sunday. So I said, okay, so nice talking with you, and I'll see you around. And so as time went on that summer, I bumped into him again and again, and then eventually we got to where I kind of figured out he was riding the exact same time, and I started switching my start times. So I would intercept with Joe somewhere between the junction and the top, so I could spend some time talking with Joe. And I really liked talking to him. And so then he asked me at one point, so why are you riding Diablo? I said, well, mostly to not get fat. but also I have a goal. And he goes, well, what's that? I said, well, I've heard rumor there's this really hard ride in the Sierras called the Death Ride. And it's something that is on my bucket list. I'd like to accomplish this. And he said, oh, well, I could give you a few tips about the Death Ride. And I thought to myself, well, this must have been like 30 years ago. I'm thinking that things have probably changed, but okay, I'll listen. And he starts telling me about it. I said, well, Joe, when did you do this? And it turns out it was just a few years ago. And I start adding up and said, well, how old are you? I was like, so you did this in your 70s? And then I'm thinking of how old I was. Well, he's 29 years older than me, and he had done this ride that I'm training my butt off for to try to do at my age, and I just couldn't believe he could do something like that. So when they first told me, I wasn't even sure. Was he making this up that he did this ride that everybody around here it's just an impossible ride for a normal person to be able to do. So eventually I got to know him well enough to go, yeah, this guy's telling the truth. He really did this. And thanks to Joe giving me tips and mostly his inspiration, later on in 2012, I did my first Death Ride, and I did complete it, but I will tell you, it's the only time I ever did it, because I checked it off my bucket list. I said, that's a really hard ride, and I never went back. So, thanks to Joe, I was able to complete that one. But so then, after I got to know him in later years, I would have fun with him. So I would come up behind him, and Joe rode with the mirror on his helmet. I could see somebody was there, but I couldn't necessarily tell who you were right away. And so oftentimes when I come up behind him, I would disguise my voice. And so he would start off with Joe would say, who's there? And I would make up some name and have some funny voice. And I would say, and I'd pretend I didn't know who he was. And I would say, I heard rumor there's some old guy that rides up this thing every week. His name is Joe Shami. Can you believe some guy that's in his 80s rides up this mountain once a week? And I would tease him about other stuff too. But it was just, I looked forward to where every time I'd start my ride, is Joe going to be on the mountain today? Am I going to bump into him and see how Joe's doing? And he would always ask about myself and my family. In 2013, I lost my job, and he was very concerned about that. And he went on to tell me about a time in his life when he was out of work. And he told me one of the toughest things for him was his self-worth. He felt that he didn't feel good about himself because he lost his job. And he consoled me and gave me advice and how to keep my spirits up through the whole thing and not to feel bad about myself about it, and just things like that. It was real. He gave a very personal touch to each one of us that he got to know. And so every time I ride Diablo, I think about Joe, even if, prior to this, I would always think about Joe, because I associate Mount Diablo and my ride with Joe. And so the next time that I'm pedaling up and I'm above Juniper and I'm struggling and my legs are killing me, my back's hurting, and I'm thinking it's cold, the wind is just howling, and I'm thinking, I really don't need to do this. And I'm going to stop when I'm still pedaling, but I'm going to stop in my mind and think, but what would Joe do? And I'm going to keep pedaling.
To be able to talk about Joe and my experiences with him. Bob Hislop and I ride frequently, and we met Joe probably a decade ago. It was a cold, miserable day that no one should have been riding on the mountain, and we were at the Lower Summit parking lot, and I think we're the only people on the mountain, and we looked over and we said, oh, another crazy person. And we started talking and became fast friends, and then from there on out, it was every week, where's Joe, where's Joe? And if I'd see Scott, I'd say, hey, did you see Joe? And if we didn't see Joe for a couple weeks, you got worried. Not because I thought he would have an accident, because Joe was a fantastic rider. He was a very safe rider. I just thought someone of his age naturally dies of natural causes. So you got worried, but then he'd be the next week, coming around the corner, there he'd be, and then you felt great, and then you'd talk to him, and you'd feel he was safe. So I was lucky enough to be able to ride with Joe many times, and I'll just tell you about one time that was probably my favorite, and it was my most difficult time riding the mountain. It was another cold, miserable day, shouldn't have been riding, but there was a window in the morning that you could get a junction in. So I got the junction in, and I went hauling ass down because it's starting to rain, and halfway down, who do I see coming up the mountain? Joe Shami. So I turn around, I say, Joe, man, you're going the wrong way. And he goes, I gotta get the junction at least. Come on, let's go. And I said, okay, I'm coming with you. So we get up to the junction, it's howling, it's sheets of rain, and I was like, okay, he'll turn around. He'll turn around, because I was terrified. Did Joe turn around? No. He kept going. I said, okay, Joe, come on, okay, we'll do Juniper. Okay, we'll do Juniper. So, when you were riding with Joe, you forgot about the time. You forgot about the conditions, because he was telling you his stories, and it was just fascinating, and his memory was amazing. So we got up to Juniper, and I'm like, oh, thank God. We're going to turn around. Did he turn around? No! And you know what I said to him? I said, okay, I was getting worried. I said, you know what, Joe? Linda's going to hear about this. And she's going to be so pissed off at me for letting you do this. He says, you know what he said? Please don't tell Linda. So, okay, we get up to the bottom of the wall, and there's literally a river of water coming down the wall. And I said, no way in hell is he going to ride the wall. He is going to walk. Did Joe Shami walk? No. I stood there. I couldn't ride it. I took a picture, and I have a picture on my Strava with his light showing, and he's riding the wall. And I said, Joe, you are the most tenacious person I've ever met in my life. And I walked it. And then we got to the top, and Bruce Erickson was there. And Bruce said, what the hell are you guys doing riding this mountain? So we tried to warm up. We were huddling, doing jumping jack. So we finally made it down. And my car was at Arbolado. And I said, well, surely he'll let me give him a ride home. He's soaked. We're utterly soaked. And he didn't want to get a ride home. And I said, Joe, that's it. Linda will kill me if I don't drive you home. And he goes, well, I don't want your car to get wet. So I stuffed him and his bike in my car. We went to Pete's, we got some coffee, we warmed up. And then later that night we emailed, and he was checking on me. He said, are you okay? I was worried about you. That's the kind of guy he was. We stayed in touch by email during COVID. He rode with me on my birthday, but it was kind of nerve-wracking. I didn't want to be the person who gave Joe COVID. So, you know, we mostly stayed in touch by email, and he was so caring and compassionate to his friends, as many people have remarked. I had surgery in March, and right when I got home, I had an email from Joe. And he said, "Are you okay? I'm worried about you." And you know, it's just he's such an amazing man, and I know so many of you wish that morning that somehow we could have been there, and that we could have helped him, or we could have warned him. But I know Joe wouldn't have given up, no matter what, and I know he wouldn't want us to give up. So please don't give up, and thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce Tom Riker, who will be playing taps to honor Joe. Joe was a veteran, and he served in the United States Army. I ask that if you are current or former military, you'll render a salute while taps is being played. If you're a civilian, it is customary to put your hand over your heart and remember Joe while taps is being played.